Here with Lyndon Coleman, ABCA ATEC NJCAA Division II Coach of the Year, but Pasco-Hernando State, also an alum, but was an assistant there as well, but named athletic director in the spring. And thanks for jumping on with me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
How gratifying was it for you as a Pasco alum winning it last year?
Well, it's just one of those things you spend your entire life dreaming of. I got a little bit of taste of it in 2019 when we went there. To be honest with you, in 2019, we really didn't know what we were doing. We were just going out there because there was baseball games being played out there. But yeah, I was very fortunate. Steve Winterling went out there and who was my athletic director, who was also the head coach at Pasco, and then also started the program. He was my AD in 2019, and he went out there. And I believe 2015 is it 20 or that? Yeah, 2014. They went out there. They got fourth, so he helped me out tremendously with going out there. But it was still, just managing, coaching, being a first year head coach at the college level. I was in summer collegiate baseball for years, but college is a whole nother animal. But then going out there in this past year was awesome. Just to see the kids' faces and how they the joy that they got. I mean, it was a high that you can't get anywhere else.
How did you adjust the schedule, having been out there in 2015? What were the differences for you then coming back to it? Because Enid's a different bracket, that we have with you guys, the Enid, Grand Junction, Lewiston. There's some funky brackets. What did you adjust with the schedule for the guys to play a little bit better this time around?
Well, I think the first time I went out there, I felt like everything we were rushed. So it was like everything was so tight with our times and getting out there, and then all of a sudden, because we had to play the first round. It was like you got out there, you went to the dinner, next day you played. So this time I wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time. So instead of leaving in the middle of the afternoon, we left really early in the morning, and got out there before. And then the other thing that I did is we didn't allow our guys to go to the games. So our guys basically just hung out at the hotel. We spent a ton of time with our host family. We spent a ton of time doing things in Enid and around the surrounding area. But I didn't let my guys go out and just hang out at the ball field for all those days and watching all those other games. And I think that helped out a lot with just being rested, and when they got to the field, they were excited to be there and play.
Plus, the weather can beat you up a little bit out there at times.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. The first year we went out there in 2019, it was raining, and it rained like the first 2 or 3 days. And they were playing games and finishing games at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and starting games at 8 o'clock the next day. Guys were slipping and sliding in the outfield. But this last year, the weather was absolutely beautiful. We didn't have one hiccup on the timing, the weather, schedule. Some games get pushed back just because scores get ran up a little bit. But the only raindrops that we had in Enid when games were being played this year was when we were getting the final couple outs to win the national championship.
Did you feel like this team had a chance to do that coming out of last fall?
There's certain moments in time that you start to see some things that it's like, we might have something special here. But you also got to kind of take a step back too, because this is baseball. And in my personal opinion, the three previous years before, I thought we had good enough teams to compete for a national championship before, and we couldn't get out of the state of Florida. The one year FSCJ beat us, and they went out and got third at Enid, and then the next 2 years, St. John's River beat us in the state tournament. Went out and got third at the World Series. And the crazy thing about that is we won the conference all 3 years, and we hosted the region tournament all 3 years and lost it all 3 years. So, we did some special things in those years, and you're like, yeah, this is the year, this is the year, this is the year, but then you don't have that big hit, you don't have that big strikeout, you make that error in the wrong spot, the other team robs a home run, and you don't have the opportunity to be able to go to Enid. But there was a couple things that happened. One was and FSW's got an incredible baseball team down there in Fort Myers, and we showed up in the fall game early, and I think we put up 24 runs on them in 14 innings. Just showed up and just mashed. And I was like, oh, these guys got a chance because, FSW Arms, they're no joke. They're 90-94 up to 5, 6s, and 7s, one after another. And that day I was like, man, we have, 10 or 12 guys that can catch up to a fastball. But I'll tell you where, the one thing that I think personally that really set this team apart from a lot of other teams was when Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton came through. And I tell everybody this, and people just kind of look at me like, oh, this has nothing to do with baseball. But we were out for about 2.5, 3 weeks when those hurricanes came through, and this area was just absolutely devastated. I mean, we had 5, 6 foot of water come off the coast and just wipe out home after home after home on the other side of US 19. And schools closed down for a little while, and when we did pick back up, we still weren't able to practice. But we as a team, and I couldn't make it voluntary. I couldn't make it as a school project, but I set it up because it was a local family in this area that got hit. That was a alumni of one of our players. So there's a father of one of our players, and they got flooded out. And I just literally just for a week set up schedules and times, and I said, hey, here's a name. You can show up if you don't want to show up. You don't have to show up. You don't have to show up. But we spent 250 man hours in that house, ripping up floorboards and drywall and gutting the house and doing all those sorts of things. And we didn't have one person miss. Many guys spent more time in that house than what they were asked to spend in there. And they just literally became extremely selfless in that moment. And when that stuff happens, and it's not like it's just, hey, 8 or 9 kids, because I think every single one of us have 8 or 9 guys that would do that for anybody, right? It was the whole team. I mean, it was guys redshirting, it was guys that were potentially going to get cut, guys that, we weren't able to make the baseball team. It was everybody was in there doing whatever they could to help out. We didn't have one person miss. We didn't have one person show up late. We didn't have one person complain. And it was awesome to see. And that's where that selflessness comes, where the team starts to potentially come together. But
Almost
that's
like you
just
got to do a Habitat for Humanity project every fall now.
yeah. And I don't want a hurricane to come here again,
No.
but holy smokes, it was just where it became that bonding moment. And in the spring, we didn't start off that rocky. We didn't start off that great. I think most people don't start off that great. And then about mid-year, when I moved a kid that's never played shortstop before. So actually, correction, he hadn't played shortstop since he was 12. I moved him to shortstop, and that's when our season turned dramatically.
How do you pull the trigger on that? A kid hasn't played since he's 12, but it's probably the best thing for your team at that point. Did you just start throwing him out there with taking ground balls to see if he could do it?
So we always take ground balls at shortstop. All our players. If you're an infielder, you take ground balls at shortstop. And the least amount of ground balls you take in our program is at second base. So you're taking ground balls at shortstop, you're taking ground balls at third. So I knew that there was something there, and he had, and the guy that was there, he was an unbelievable shortstop. He just wasn't hitting. And Grant Jordan was hitting, and he was making some plays at second, making some plays at third. And I just called him. I said, listen, we just need a little bit more juice in the lineup so I can add depth. And the only way to do that is to put you at short. And I asked him, I said, when's the last time that you played short? And he says, I haven't played short since I was 12, coach. And then he said, and the reason why I knew he had a chance, he goes, but it's a kid's game. So I was like, okay, he's just going to go out there and have fun. What's ironic about it is he made 4 errors at shortstop all year and ended up becoming the National Defensive Player of the Year after that.
It's a
So
Mookie Betts moment.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think a lot of people overcomplicate infield play. So we keep it real simple here. You catch the ball, you set your feet, and you throw the ball to third base. I don't think there's much of a difference between third base and shortstop, and second base is obviously a little bit different just because of the distance of the throw. So, but
You
yeah, I mean, when we
you
made that decision, it was incredible because we had one error at the catching position all year. We had 4 errors at shortstop, 5 errors at second base, and we had 1 error in center field. So we played 62 baseball games and made 11 errors up the middle. I think anybody that knows anything about baseball is probably going to be like that. They have a pretty good baseball team.
Historically, your roster the same in the fall and the spring, or do you bring guys in at the break sometimes?
Yeah, we move some things around. Typically in the 33 to 36 range in the fall. And then we used to have a roster limit of 26 in the state, and then it got bumped to 28. Now it's at 30. I don't even think I'm going to be able to roster 30 this year. I'm probably going to be in the 27, 28 range. But I brought in anywhere between one guy at the end of the fall into the spring up to four. So last year we brought in four. This year we're bringing in three.
Really good numbers offensively and on the mound too. Do you try to keep it simple there as well? Because I think people are overcomplicating hitting and pitching now too. But do you try to
Um,
keep it simple there too?
yeah. So we don't have a batting cage here. So I think that batting cages, in my personal opinion, create this illusion that you are getting work in hitting because it's like, oh, it's a little overcast, or it's a little cold, or it's a little rainy today, or the field's wet, or whatever. Let's just go slot the guys in from 1 to 2 for cage work, and the guys go down there and they hit off the tee, they hit some front toss, they do some machine work, but it's like, yeah, they swung the bats, but it's not to the level of what it takes to become a better hitter. So not having a batting cage at our place, I mean, literally we have a single barrel. It's the net's got holes in it. I have caution tape around it so that people from the local community don't even come in and use it. But what it's forced us to do is, we have two turtles on the cage on the field. So we have a turf field and we have two turtles. We have, four machines. We have two senior hacks. We have two junior hacks. We got two L screens. We got two pitchers ramps. We got all that stuff. And what it does is it forces us to actually go out and hit on the field. And I think that there's so much more benefit to hitting on the field than hitting in a cage because there's guys that do this all the time. They're like, hey coach, I smoked that ball in the cage, or cage bombs, or I hit that ball really hard. And the next thing you know, they come out on the field and it's just a routine fly out to the center field. It's a routine fly out to the left fielder. So we we do our best to get anywhere between 40 and 60 swings on the field at every single day. So minimum 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, as close to game like as possible to where those guys can see flight and ball flight and where it goes per week. Whether that's off of a senior hack that's replicating a 92-mile-per-hour fastball, or a junior hack that's moved in, that's raised up, that is replicating a right-handed slider or a left-handed slider, or there's a coach throwing live pitches in there to where it's simulated live game BP. We're doing some sort of 40 to 50 to 60 swings with all our hitters between 5 and 6 times a week, with some sort of variation with that right there on the offensive side. And then what the final thing we add in there is competitiveness. So we make some sort of game out of it. We make some sort of point game. There's winners to the winners goes to the spoils. They got to go home. The losers have to go run or do something else. And, if you show up to one of our batting practices, a lot of times there's a lot of people talking crap to each other. There's some banter going on. It's just not, hey, hit your two backside singles and take hit a couple ground balls, and then the next guy's up. There's cones out on the field, telling guys where we want the ball to be hit. There's a single being hit up the middle, and guys are getting excited and putting pressure on their teammates to perform. So, and we kind of do a similar thing with the pitchers. Our pitchers get downhill 4 times a week off of a mound. So I believe that there's throwing development where, that's for the off season. That's for, winter break. It's for summer break. It's for when you're not playing. So that's long tossing and going into stuff like that. We do not long toss in our program. We throw off the mound. And you only have so many bullets a week. And I believe that, if you're going to stand on the white line and throw it 300 feet into left center field, and that guy that you're throwing it to can run 30 feet and go catch it, I don't think you're working on accuracy that much. And I don't think you're working on strike command that much. So, we get our guys out to 120, 150, and they get their arms loose, and then we stick them on the mound. And if they're going to throw 80% plus effort wise, it's going to be working off that rubber, working down that hill, and they're going to be working towards a catcher. Whether that's a catcher that's in front of home plate or a catcher that's behind home plate because it's a short box or a full bullpen, or he's doing that to a hitter that's in the box. But when you're going to throw in our program and you're going to throw with effort, you're going to throw intent, there's going to be some sort of target you're throwing to, and I think that helps out our guys a lot in just pure strike command.
What are they doing on their non-slope days? So they're off the slope 4 days. Those non-slope days, what are they doing?
So a typical week is this. This is a quote unquote pitching development week. Like, we're learning how to pitch. Is your Monday day is a prep day to get off the mound on Tuesday against a hitter. And a Monday prep day is, you show up, you do all your prehab stretching. We're huge into flexibility. We spend a boatload of time on the pre side of arm care. And then they go into bands, they go into plow care, some variation of plow care, which is driveline program, but we don't do the underload overload stuff. And then they go throw to about 120 feet, and then they're on a mound, throwing anywhere between 18 and 25, maybe up to 30 pitches, depending on how they feel that day. And then on a Tuesday, that's a mid-level throw day. Then on Tuesday, that's a high intent day where they're going to blow it out that day. They're going to do the same thing that they did on Monday, but they're going to add in hitters. And they're going to throw anywhere between 15, 20, or 30 pitches to a hitter. Wednesday is a recovery day. That's active rest. So a recovery day is active rest, which means that they are going through all their prehab stuff. They're going through all their plow care stuff. They're going through all their bands. And then instead of getting off a mound and throwing to a catcher, they're just going to play light catch. And then Tuesday, they do Monday's program again. And then Friday, they do Tuesday's program again. So there's 4 days off the mound, 2 really heavy, 2 mid-level. There's 1 active recovery day. Saturday is supposed to be an active recovery day. I think most of our guys do it. I don't know if all our guys do. We don't have to practice. And then Sunday's an off day.
Love it.
That's typically how it works for us. We've had a lot of success with that.
I'm with you. I think more time. I think the command piece is, ours was a little different, but our starters got 2 bullpens in during the week, and I just felt like it allowed them to throw more strikes.
Yep.
And kept them healthier too.
Yeah, I think some of the issue with health is this, and if you're blowing out, if you got 20 arms and you got 7 to 8 guys hurt a year, maybe 10 guys hurt, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
in my personal opinion.
I agree.
Okay. And I think most people will agree with that, right? Also, when I talk to coaches that say, hey, we haven't had an arm injury in 2 or 3 years. I also think that is a problem as well. And the reason for that is I don't think you're pushing your guys enough, you know, and there's a little bit of a risk and a reward to pitching development and velocity and all those sorts of things. And with that, you do have to push your body to the point where it could potentially break down. So, we are a program that generally has 1 to 3 guys that are, going through some sort of progression for Tommy John or whatever. We've been very fortunate. We haven't had any shoulder surgeries in years. And I think that is way out of the game for the most part, just because back when I was growing up, it was everybody tore their labrum, everybody tore their rotator cuff, but a
I think
lot
the
of the pitch.
recovery piece has gotten so much better on all that. I think that's where the plyo care balls. I think everything that players are doing now for the shoulder, I think that's alleviated a lot of those issues.
Well, I also think that the some of the mechanical things that are being taught as well. The inverted W was a Mark Pryor and Brandon Webb. There was a lot of guys that did that, and the capsule tears. You don't hear of that stuff anymore. And also, when you start using the weighted balls, you can't have a high elbow because the strength, you can't carry a 32-ounce ball in your arm with your elbow way above your head. So, when you have a 5-ounce baseball in your hand and that's all you throw your entire life, you can have some poor mechanics there. But when you put a 32-ounce ball in anybody's hand and you say, hey, throw this, you get your arm into a completely different spot. And I think that's a lot of the things that have changed. And it took, years for that to happen. I mean, now we're into the point where, when I first started coaching, it was like, hey, weighted balls are a new thing. And the only people using weighted balls were the pro guys, and it was trickling down into some college guys. Now the guy, every single guy that you recruit almost uses weighted ball. So it's completely transformed the arm path and movement path of every recruit that you're getting into college now. So, and with that, we have 1 to 3 guys, and on our World Series team last year, we threw 5 arms, and that's all it took for us to win the national championship. And 3 of the 5 arms that we threw blew out the year before and had Tommy John. All 3 of them had Tommy John. Rehabbed them and brought them back and got them. And they were all bigger, stronger, faster. They all threw harder. They all felt better. And so the Coco Eaton over here in Tampa did all 3 of them. So thank you, Coco, for fixing our 3 guys.
Love it. That was on our podcast this week, was a return to throw protocol that Randy Sullivan and Alan Jager actually put together. Now, does that adjust at all in the springtime? With the 4 days off the mound, depending on your rotation guys.
So
Your schedule probably dictates that a little bit to be able to still do that, correct?
Yeah. So starters will be 3 times a week. So they have their they have their extended out start that they're going to have, 80 to 110 pitches or whatever it is. But then in between that period of time, because we do active rest, right? We want to make sure that they are actively moving and actively throwing and actively lifting. That they're still going to have a short box into a full pen into their.
And that's what I said. Our guys threw 2 in the spring. They should threw short box, extended bullpen, and then they threw against somebody else.
Yeah, we don't flag round here either. So I don't believe in the flag round. Some guys will do some flag round work a little bit, but I think that the biggest issues with flag round is that you don't have the slope. And then also a lot of people do flag rounds wrong because the guy that's catching it, they're standing up. So when you throw a breaking ball in flat ground, your release point's up here, but your release point needs to be out here to be able to throw it off of a mound at 60 feet, 6 inches. So you're actually practicing the wrong release point.
Our flat ground guys had to get down.
Yeah. So,
Their
and
catcher's really good.
I see that happen all the time everywhere. And I'm just like, yeah, no wonder why that team doesn't throw good breaking balls, because they over there doing flat ground work and they're popping it up out of their hand. And then we go out there and pitch, and every single one of their guys are just popping breaking balls up out of their hand by their ear, not getting out front on top of them.
I sometimes when we were stretching it out and on the pull downs coming back in, I would make the guy receiving to get down, even though it's a further distance, to
Yeah.
force guys to get out through it, to force them to get through their throws.
That's the best time. That's the best time to practice a changeup.
It is. It is.
So,
For anybody that wants tips on changeups, it's long toss, changeup grip, or extend catchers too, because you talked about moving the catcher
yeah,
back. I think moving the catcher back is a great time for catchers. So and the
80,
go ahead.
70 foot bullpens
Yes,
with
love it,
change ups, and then just
love it.
and and the other thing people don't understand too, it's a great time for your catcher to work on blocking. You
Yes.
know, so I start chewing on a lot of guys right then and there, and it's like, hey, that's our you complain about not getting blocking drills and all this. So right there's 22 blocking drills. We got 22 arms coming through, and we're throwing all these balls in the dirt to keep it in front, buddy.
You guys lift before
So
or after practice?
um, we lift on our own here. So, and I think it's the best way to do it. The reason why we do it this way is because of it's a flexibility. So, I mean, I was a guy that loved to lift at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, that was just me. It's just the way I did it. I'd go through my whole entire day. I knew what my day had to entail. My coach ran me that day. He didn't run me that day. I had to run the bases. I had to steal. We just showed up and hit BP. I had a good idea what we were doing. So I ate. I went to the gym. I lifted. I went home. I took a shower. I went to sleep. And by 12 o'clock, I'm out. Right. But some people, I mean, they love to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and go lift. I think those people are the craziest people in the world, but there's people that get massive in the weight room at 6 o'clock. There's people that get massive in the weight room right before practice. There's people that get massive in the weight room right after practice. So we do guide our guys very heavily in the weight room of what they should be doing, how they should be doing. It's all completely different. We got guys on stretching programs that are not even allowed to touch a dumbbell or a weight right now, just because if they did lift, they would be too big and they wouldn't be flexible enough to be able to move the baseball. So we back those guys off and they go on stretching programs. We have other guys that are on food programs that they have to meet a certain number of calories each and every single day of certain types of food groups to be able to even be able to be on the baseball field with us, because if you don't get bigger and you don't get stronger, you're going to get hurt. So like you have to become more physical to become more durable to then therefore allow us to be able to practice you. If I just let you come out here and practice and eat your Twinkies and O's and your fast food, you're with my experience, your arm's going to get hurt. So, we have to change food. We have to change the way you sleep. We have to change the what you do in the weight room. And most of our guys lift in small groups anyways. So, and there's a Crunch Fitness. I don't know if you guys have them where you guys are at, but Crunch Fitness has multi-million-dollar gyms, and we have one right by the apartment complex. So a lot of our guys stay at, and they can just walk right across the street. And I'm an athletic director, so for us to build Crunch Fitness gym on college campus is going to cost us like $7-8 million. So for $9.99 a month, these guys can go get a multi-million-dollar weight room facility right there. So
How are you
yeah.
assessing maybe who's too mobile and needs more strength, or guys that maybe are too bound up that need more mobility?
I think you see it in the way they move, and I think that's just experience on just on the field. So just by watching them on the baseball field and running and whatever. And I say this to people all the time. I mean, and it's more we run into this more with not the guys that need to gain weight and need to gain size. It's a lot of the guys that think the more they lift and the more they work out and the better they eat and the better they take care of themselves. And they're that really good kid that's, overanalyzing,
The overtraining.
overdoing it, overtraining. Those are the kids that it's like, hey, listen, dude, you're 215 pounds. You're an extremely physical kid here, and you're coming out here and you can't hit the baseball out of the ballpark, and so, it's like, how's that possible? You're 250. I got a 192 pounder here that's hitting every other pitch out of the ballpark. You're 215 pounds, and you can squat 500 and you can bench 280 and you can do all these other sorts of things, but you can't even hit the ball out of the ballpark. I don't think the reason why you can't hit the ball farther is because you can't squat 550 or 600 pounds. I think that there's another issue that you have, and the reason why you can't hit the ball in the ballpark.
You have your master's in sports psych. How much are
Yep.
you using that with your guys?
All the time. They just don't know
It's
it.
it's sprinkled in.
Oh, it's all the time. Yeah. These kids need a lot these days. So, every single one of them needs something different. So you're getting a whole nother slew of kids, and they just come from totally different backgrounds. Um, I think that when I was growing up, maybe when you were growing up was a little bit different, but you kind of cookie cutter a lot of stuff with a lot of the guys, just because a lot more people were raised similarly, and today everybody's raised completely different. Some kids are still getting spanked and some kids aren't getting spanked. Some kids have never gotten told no, and some kids have been getting told no their entire life, so, and you are a product of your environment, and whatever your environment was previously is what you're gonna be. So, but the one thing is, our standard never changes here. And I tell our guys from the first step is that I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you do. We're all human beings. We'll make adjustments. The standard is going to be here, and you're going to meet those expectations. If you don't, you're not going to make it here. And when you start meeting those expectations, I don't care how good you are, I'm going to raise the bar a little bit higher. So there's nobody in our program that has met my expectations, because my expectations always keep raising on every single player.
So your messaging didn't change at all with this group this fall? Your new group?
No, no. So same thing, show up and dominate each and every single day. So, you got to get better every single day, and whatever happens in 6 months from now, you can't control it. You can only control what you can do on this day. So, we don't talk about Enid. We don't talk about going out to Enid. Our guys last year, I'd say half of our team didn't even know where Enid was or whatnot. So, and we talked about the 3 previous years before. I mean, our guys knew where Enid was at. They knew how to get there, what we were doing, and all that stuff. And I think that, we were focused on something that was, 6 weeks out and whatever. And, you gotta win today to be able to get to where you want to go tomorrow. So we just started focusing on day-to-day things.
Plus, Florida is so competitive. Like, nothing every year is going to be a challenge to get through your schedule, and then also to try to get there. I know there's auto bids now, but your guys' schedule is so hard.
Well, we played 28 teams that were ranked when we played 28 games. So, we 52-10 or whatever the record was, but 28 of those games. But and the other, what's funny about that is if you take the Division I teams that we played that weren't ranked and you just move them down to D2, every single one of those teams would have been ranked in Division II. So, we're playing 35, 40, D2 quote unquote quality ranked, nationally ranked baseball teams a year. So very fortunate.
How do you get your freshmen through that? They probably haven't played that type of schedule. I know they've played competitive travel ball and high school baseball,
Yeah.
but not the type of schedule that you guys play. And you're going to get punched in the mouth sometimes. How do you get them ready for that?
Well, the beautiful thing about the state of Florida is just the density of talent. And, you go to other states, listen, there's other states and other regions of the country that can come down and they can beat teams in the state of Florida. And you see it at the national level all the time. But the difference is they got to drive 6, 8 hours, 10 hours to go play a team as nationally competitive as them. I drive an hour and a half and I can get to CF, I can get to Polk, I can get to State College of Florida, I can get to HCC, and I can get to St. Pete. CF's got a national championship. Polk's been out to Grand Junction. State College of Florida is arguably the winningest team in the state of Florida, with all the history between Tim Hill Sr. and Tim Hill Jr. Get HCC's won a national championship. They play at Steinbrenner. In St. Pete for 20 years under Dave Pano was arguably one of the best teams in the entire country. And we're just talking about junior college. We're not even talking about the University of Tampa. That's a D2 program just down the road that just won their 10th national championship and 9th under Joe Urso, that either he was a player or head coach of. And then you got Southeastern, which is an NAIA program that's got a couple national championships, Weber. And this is all within an hour and a half of my college. And that doesn't include that we got Tampa Jesuit. That's a high school program here. Then we got Calvary Christian, and we got some of the best high school baseball programs like Plant and Steinbrenner and Sickles and Eastlake, and you have Land O'Lakes, and you got Mitchell High School and all that stuff. So it's just the density of talent. I think our guys, it's a little bit easier of a transition for them just because they're so used to it's more natural for them to play that level. But yeah, it's a grind for the freshmen. But I think that most importantly, you make the fall so hard that they leave the fall and they're just exhausted, that they overbreak, get some rest, and they re-energize, and the spring is easier than the fall.
With the transfer portal and NIL now, is that an advantage for y'all down there with junior college? Because maybe the Division I rosters especially have gotten older. Is that an advantage for y'all from a recruiting standpoint?
Here's my answer on the transfer portal. The transfer portal really hasn't changed much for junior college. It's changed a lot for the four-year schools, because the four-year schools had a lot more restrictions on what they could and couldn't do. But now, you can play at 4 different Division I's in 4 different years, and you can take 4 different NIL deals, and you can leverage that, and you can go from one program, and then you can go play professional baseball after 4 years. Well, technically, you could have done that if you started in junior college 20 years ago. You could have went to St. Pete, then you could have went to Pasco, and then you could have went to, university, and moved around in that way. So, from the junior college standpoint, the transfer portal 15, 20 years ago, it was a cell phone. Now it populates on the interwebs whether somebody's gotten in or not. But most of the deals that are done before they even hit the transfer portal. So by the time they're in the transfer portal, I almost guarantee it's too late, because our rules in junior college do not overlap the NCAA rules. So you don't technically have to go into the transfer portal in NCAA to go junior college. So that day that you decide not to go back to the school, well, technically you don't have to anyways, but out of respect, the correct way is talk to your coach, say you want to transfer, and then from there, you don't technically have to be in the NCAA portal to go junior college.
We're trying to get some of that streamlined for y'all. Actually, we're trying to. But
yeah,
I mean, what's the benefit been with Coach Winterling along the way? I mean, you pretty much played for him, were an assistant with him,
yeah,
then took over, and then now in the AD spot. I mean, what of a kind of benefit is that for you to have someone that's been in your shoes?
Well, the history that he has is incredible. The people that he knows, just and a lot of times I call him and it's like, hey, where do I find this? Where's this at? Where's that at? Where's this? He makes things, he cuts through the red tape on that. And what it's really done for our program with baseball is, we have all our stats. We have I think we have almost every pitch that's been thrown in our program. We have every player that's been on our program, so that history is not lost here. And that's one thing that I got with our new basketball coach the other day with I had a meeting. I was like, hey, like we got to get with our old basketball coach. We got to get with Steve. We got to get with all these guys that have been here forever because we got to make sure that all the sports have this stuff archived here. Just because a lot of the four-year schools and whatnot that are big universities, they had SIDs, they had ADs, they had all these managers, they had all these types of people. But a lot of that stuff here at our school was done through the coaching staff. So if the coach did a good job with it, you got it. If the coach didn't do a good job with it, you didn't have it. But Steve is incredible with NJCAA rules. He's incredible with eligibility. He's incredible with he was stats. He ran the stats in the state for back in the day when you didn't have the presto, so everybody would call him and say, hey, score is 4-3, we beat this person, whatever. And he'd sit in his computer over there, and I honestly don't know how people coach baseball 30 years ago. I mean, I've started just recently. We've always had cell phones, but with landlines and you guys are sending memorandums around
No
campus
GPS.
and and not knowing where to go and how to get to South Florida State College and
Or how
driving
long it
here
might
and
take you
there.
with traffic. Like,
Oh, I don't know how baseball was played 35 years ago. I would love to just transport myself 35, 40 years ago in the late 80s and just figure out how did you get umpires to the field? How did you know if they were going to be on time or not? Did they show? Did they not show? Who were you getting? How did you assign them? I mean, there's a million things that those guys did, 30, 35 years ago. It just blows my mind that they got done.
and is that your vision as an athletic director? You're kind of trying to build a culture for all the teams now, like you did with baseball.
Yeah, we have extremely competitive sports here. We have softball, we have volleyball, we have basketball, and men's and women's cross country, and we just started soccer a couple years ago. Our volleyball team has been phenomenal for years. They've won a national championship in 2010. Our men's and women's cross country team has been nationally ranked every single year that they've been in the state. Our softball program's been to the World Series a couple times. So like anything, right? We're in a population of a service district of about 1.3 million people. We're very fortunate that we're still work as a 2-year school on the athletic side, but we have almost 13,000 students. We have 4,000 our sort of students that are in an AA program. We have AS programs. We have the police academy. We got the fire academies. We got the welding academy. We got electrical. We have nursing. We have dental. We have all these programs, and we also have 4-year business programs too. So, with those 4-year business programs, if someone, that say at a community college is running out of classes at that school and he can't use his eligibility because he's running out of classes at Pasco, if you want to study business, I can throw you in a 4-year business program and you're still eligible at the D2 level. So, which is very fortunate for all our sports. We're no longer a community college; we're a state college. It allows us to draw from a big area, and we really dive into the local area. And many of our student athletes are local. And so I take a lot of pride in that, as an athletic director and as a baseball coach, just making sure that you're taking care of your service district that the school is, supposed to be helping out. And in 23, we played a weekend series, and I wrote the final game of the lineup. We had the number 1 ranked offense in the entire country. We had 7 players and our starting pitcher. We swept the weekend. We scored like 40 some runs and gave up less than 10. And 7 of our players slept in their own bed that night with their parents. And the starting pitcher slept in his own bed that he graduated in high school with and with his parents. And we were ranked, I don't know, 7th, 8th in the country, and we had the number 1 offense in the country based upon numbers. And it was players from the high schools right down the road. I take a lot of pride in that.
Did you have to adjust your baseball responsibilities at all with taking over as athletic director with your
Um,
staff? I mean, with the baseball, the assistants, did you
well,
have to
I'm very
restructure anything?
fortunate. I have a
I
grounds
know you
guy
have a
that
big
takes
staff. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
have a
You got a
grounds
big
guy
staff.
that takes care of the grounds. So, when I first became the coach here, Steve took care of the grounds. So, he was out there mowing and edging and doing all that type of stuff. But we were able to get it to a point where it's like, hey, if I'm mowing and weed eating and edging 20 hours a week, am I really helping the student athletes here at the college? And they're like, no. So we're very fortunate we got that position. And I'm also very fortunate that Braden Lyman's here. He was on my 2019 World Series team. He worked grounds for me for a year. He was also one of my paid assistants. And now, he's in a situation where with his work, he's got a full-time job, but he gets Mondays, he works remote. Fridays, he works remote. He lives just right down the road. He went to the local high school. He coaches third base for us. He's dynamite. He's one of the best third base coaches in the entire country. Just challenge anybody to show up and watch where he positions and moves his feet and all that type of stuff. He does just like a double A third base coach. And then we have Derek Curlew, who went to a local high school here, and then he played at here for a couple years, and then ended up opening up his own gym. So he's got Live Fit Performance right down the road. He does nutrition, he does strength, he does agility, he does personal training in this area, and he volunteers. He volunteers for us. We also have Larry Beats, who he's the winningest high school baseball coach in Pasco County, and then he was also here as an assistant under Steve for 7 years, and as assistant under me for 3 years. And he's still around and heavily involved. And we run the Beats Classic in the fall, where we have 8 teams come in and play, and it's extremely competitive. And there are 8 of the best teams in this area for high school baseball, and we play a 2-week tournament out here in honor of everything that Larry Beats did in this area. So it's just having that core consistency of guys, and I'm forever indebted to those guys because they sacrifice so much time, energy, and effort. And they all have a little piece of the program that they can help us out with. So it's just kind of delegating those tasks, and then from my standpoint is just kind of overseeing and making sure and holding those players accountable to what those guys are trying to get them to do.
And you have field turf, right? You have it on the
Yeah, so
infield?
we have AstroTurf put it in. I have a half AstroTurf infield, and actually it is built and designed exactly the same way that Enid's is. So
Nice.
our
Love it.
guys play at our place, and then they go to Enid, and it's the same.
Love it. Do you have a fail forward moment? Something you thought was going to set you back, but looking back now, it helped you move forward?
Say that again.
So it's a fail forward moment. Something along the way, it could be professionally or personally, something that you thought was going to set you back, but looking back now, it helped you move forward.
Well, I was diagnosed with melanoma on my 35th birthday, stage 3 melanoma. And that was in what was that? The 24 season. So, that's when we had Chris Arroyo and Aiden Korn, and that was the year before we won the national championship. Um, so just kind of getting hit with that. And then, I ended up having to have surgery. I got like a 12-inch scar on my back where they removed all that stuff. And then I started, cancer treatments after that season was over with. But we are currently 63-12 since the what was it, the um, Polk State series. So I was diagnosed with cancer, had to break it to the team, and then I didn't really want to just like out there just tell everybody about it. But the issue is it was in the middle of the season. So if it was like in the summer, Christmas break, I probably could have hit it a little bit. But when you have, I just wanted the questions and I just wanted everybody to know. So I just kind of like put it out there of what I had. But that was a big distraction for that team. We didn't really have that great of a year, but we went to Polk State College, and I think we were first in the conference, or maybe we were tied for first or whatever it was. And we got smoked. And I had surgery on that Monday. I drove down with Steve, met the team. I was in a sling, and we just got smoked. Like it was like we did not play baseball the way that our guys were taught. And so that Monday, I came in and I completely took everything from every single player. And the only thing that they had was their turfs, they had their cleats, they had their socks, they had their practice pants. I took their 6 pairs of pants that I gave them that are $125 a pop from Rollins. They had their sliders, they had their practice A4, it's like an $8 shirt that we get with a number on the back. They had that. I took all their game tops. I took 2 of their 3 of their hats, and we had like a 2-hour powwow in the dugout about how we've just lost our direction of where we're going with this program, and we take everything for advantage of everything that everybody's bought and purchased. And, we have lights, we have turf, back in the day, our guys used to show up and play for completely different reasons, for the reasons that you guys play for. And just went down all of that stuff, just, how the expectations of what our program, the direction our program is supposed to go. And I'm sitting there in the sling, getting ready to start cancer treatments and all these other sorts of things. And we ended up winning 11 games in a row and going from third in conference to first in conference, winning conference hosting. And then we ran into the tournament, and South Florida State College just played a couple of incredible games against us, and they robbed a home run. It was just one of those things that ended up happening. But since then, it's just changed the perspective of like what you're trying to do, and winning baseball games is so very important. And I talk about winning baseball games all the time, but winning relationships, I think, is more important, and winning those relationships with your players. And what it's done is it changed the way that I treat our players, the way that I communicate with our players, how empathetic I am to them, on just them dealing with issues and problems, and just transitioned into building our players up so that they can learn how to deal with adversity, rather than telling them, hey, forget about that, move on, dig your heels in. No, you got to teach your guys how to live through adversity and how to overcome that adversity.
Love it. We need much more of that. Much more of that. How do you have to take any precautions now with melanoma? Do you have to
So I just had my 5th PET scan. So I'm technically a year and a half out. I did immunotherapy for a full year, and it's not like chemo. Chemo is completely different than immunotherapy, but it still just runs you down and kicks you. But yeah, that came back negative. So, I'll get another one in 6 months. And then after that 6 months, then I should be going in for a year. But I'll always have to get monitored and checked up. I'll probably be seeing the oncologist the rest of my life, because of, I was very fortunate that my wife caught it. So she caught it on my back, and she forced me to go in, and I was supposed to go in at 12 months because, I'm in Florida. I'm out in the sun all the time, and I got a bunch of moles on my body. So, but
I
she
go
told
twice
me,
a year because of it. My dad's had so much stuff scraped off his skin, who coached for a
yeah.
long time, but I go every 6 months to get stuff checked.
Well, the beautiful thing about melanoma is you can have it 100 times. It's just you just got to make sure you catch it in stage 1, and you catch it in stage 1, they go and cut it out, and you're good. It's the same thing with basal cell. I've had basal cell on my forearms, which is a much slower, more progressive one. But the one thing I will say is that basal cell is much more of a sun-related cancer that's developed, and it takes a lot more time, and that's usually like what's being frozen off of people, when you that type of stuff. Melanoma is not necessarily a sun-related cancer. It's more of a manipulation of of like a mole or the melanocyte. So, my place that I had it was on my shoulder, but I'm from Indiana. I didn't spend a ton of time outside. And, I spent a lot of time outside, but I never spent it with my shirt off.
Yeah.
So, and I've had moles removed and checked and had issues with moles in places that haven't seen the sun and very much ever. So just because you're like, hey, I'm not outside, I'm outside, I'm sitting inside, whatever, you should get your skin checked. Just because if you're proactive on it, then you should be fine. You'll never deal with the issue. The issue is if you never do anything. And really at the end of the day, melanoma kills people like me, that are 33, 34, 35 years old. And you're like, oh, I don't need skin. I'm 35 years old. Well, by the time that you feel sick to go see the doctor, you're looking at your stomach, they're looking at your heart, they're looking at all these other areas. But really what killed you is this little mole on the back of your calf that that's where it originated and that's where it started, just because you ignored it.
How'd you rally through the immunotherapy?
You just dig your heels in. Just dig your heels in and go. I spent a lot of time hanging out at the hotel at the World Series, just because it's a lot. And immunotherapy is much easier than chemotherapy. But for me, it felt like every single day I had like a mild flu, and in some days it was much heavier. So without the stomach nausea, so it was like a constant headache. It was like you felt like you're running a fever, body aches. You're just run down. But I think it's just like anything else, right? Like you have your guys on your team that are battling through being tired and weak, and I think just sports, puts you in that situation where you got to dig your heels in and keep moving forward, and you just gotta fight your way through it. Those guys were out there battling for me, and I had to go out there and battle for them.
Yeah, tips for coaches on maintaining your relationship with your significant other coaching?
Well, two things. Number one, I will tell you a story about Riley Fisher. So keeping relationships with players is, and my wife is extremely important. So don't think that because I'm going to Riley Fisher. But one thing that I started doing is I started going around and asking my players just during practice. I said, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Everything good, right? And I'll tell you right now, we would not have won the national championship if I did not have this in my playbook of going around and talking to our guys. And usually a lot of leaders are afraid of doing that because they don't want to draw out problems, or potential issues. So what they do is they just kind of ignore it because they know if they go talk to that kid, then he's going to tell them something and they're going to have to deal with it. Right. So I was doing that one day, a couple days before we were leaving to go out to Enid. I was just seeing how everybody was feeling. I was seeing how everybody was ever. Next thing you know, I get to Riley Fisher, who's their number 2 starter. He's got 10 wins on the year. He ends up committing to La Tech. He's 91, 93 up to 94. And I think you learn a lot about your players by doing this. But I walked up to him and said, hey, man, what's going on? Everything good? And he's like, yeah, my arm feels great. And he says, my toe is killing me. And I'm like, what? Your toe? And he goes, yeah, my mom was, I think I got an ingrown toenail. I was trying to dig this out and do this other type of stuff. And I'm like, let me see that thing. So I looked at it and I was like, holy smokes, like this is not good. Like it's his push off foot. And so I instantaneously took a picture of it. Our second baseman's dad was a podiatrist, and I sent him the picture. I'm like, what the heck's going on with this guy's foot? And he goes, he's got an ingrown toenail. And he's like, whose is that? And I said, it's Riley Fisher's. And he goes, he needs to get that taken care of today. And he'll feel instant relief, everything. So I started getting on the phone, but we ended up sending him down to Fort Myers, and they ended up relieving that, and because he was just going to fly to Enid with an ingrown toenail. If he would have done
Plus, it can
that,
get infected too.
yeah, he wouldn't have pitched.
Yeah.
So he was still tender when he threw in the World Series, but it was fixed. It would have been way better than if you had a pitch with an
Yeah.
ingrown toenail. So I think that's huge with your players, is just walking up to them, especially like when you're hitting double barrel BP and there's all this other stuff going on, and you're just kind of leaving your hitters alone because you've been up there, berating them for 30 minutes. You just go out in the outfield and say, hey, what's going on? How's class? How's school? How's family? And start talking to them like that. I think that's big. The one thing with your wife or your significant other, I think it's extremely important that you find one that supports your career. And I think that I went to a showcase this past weekend that I've been going to for like 13, 14 years. And there's like 20, 30 coaches that go to it every single year. The original ones that I went to 13 years ago, I'm the only one that's still coaching college baseball. Everybody else is doing something else. And I'll tell you right now, if your wife is not supportive of you in your position as a baseball coach, and that's what you want to do for the rest of your life is coach baseball, something's going to give.
You have to have that conversation up front.
Yeah, it's just like
In the dating process, you have to have that conversation up front.
And it's the same thing with your financials. You need to talk about financials. What are your goals? What do you want to do? It's the same thing about whether you're going to follow Jesus or not. Like there's
some fundamental differences. Like everybody says opposites attract. I don't agree with any of that. Those fundamental things, you have to be on the same page with your significant other.
That's right. And
if
you're going to coach baseball, you got to throw that in there. So when you do your dating and you ask, hey, what are the 5 or 6 things we have to agree upon to be able to move forward for the next 50 years? Whatever that says, Gordon Ramsay or whatever, throw the baseball one in there. And they need to understand that, I am shared with, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. My children are shared with 30 some other guys on the baseball team. And I get phone calls at 1:00 in the morning, you get phone calls at 5:00 in the morning. And it's just a part of our family, and it's a part of our life. But my wife was an All-American softball player at Berry. She grew up. Her younger brother played college baseball, so she understands it. She gets it. And I think that is, if you're coaching and you're trying to choose your significant other, I think that helps you out immensely if you are dating or choosing someone that played sports before. I'd be very concerned if they never played sports before. And what I would do is I'd start having them, come around. And even for my wife, it's still difficult for her. But I think that after, we won the World Series and she saw the families and she saw what it did for our program, she saw what it did for our community. She's starting to see, hey, like this is a little bit bigger than what we got going on inside our own house. So it's like you gotta think like everybody that's in your life, they end up in your house too. So and your house ends up at the college and in your dugout too. So you just it's a whole big blended hot mess.
Love it. It is. Yeah, a chance to reflect on getting this award.
Starting to, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Is winning the national championship. And there's so many variables that go into it. You got to be incredibly good. Like your team from 1 to 28 on the roster has to be really good. You have to be lucky. There's luck that plays into it, timing, not running into a left-handed pitcher that your team's not good, can't hit, making sure the matchups are right with your pitchers and all that stuff. Just a ball being hit and it hits a foul line, or gets robbed, or an umpire makes a bad call in the wrong spot. There's so many things that go into that. And then being healthy, those are things you just can't necessarily control. It's just making sure the right guys are healthy. I mean, we had our first baseman who was going to hit in the 3-hole. He blew out his knee before the season even started. Our number 3 starter that we had that was rolling, he blew out his elbow. And then we had our number 1 and number 2 bullpen arms went down midway through the spring. So it's just I think it's something that I'll be able to reflect on in a few years as things start to maybe slow down.
Well, when you and I were trying to get connected to record, and then I looked, and I'm like, oh, he took the AD job. I'm like, he's not just coaching. He's got a lot of stuff in the air right now with his
Yeah, and it was
responsibilities.
awesome. We just had a ring ceremony
Love it.
on December 13th. We brought everybody back. I mean, we had over 200 some people here.
Love it.
It was 3 hours. I spoke for 52 minutes up
Love
there,
it.
and the reason why I know that is because I can speak for a long time. So somebody hit record and they're like, "Oh, coach, you were under an hour. Good job." We unveiled the banner in the gym and went out. We have the brick array. We have the new stadium entrance that we have here. We have the sign in left field that we put up for the guys. It was just good to get a ton of closure on just the season. Not closure on winning a national, but just closure on just finishing, giving the guys the rings and be able to move forward. On that was incredible.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Lyndon. I appreciate it, man. It's great having
I
you on.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thanks.